I told you before! Finish serving the guests. This isn't your place.
I'm your wife, not your servant.
The worst humiliation of my life didn't happen in private. It happened with 100 people watching. Some lowered their eyes because they were embarrassed for me. Others smiled because they thought I deserved it. And one man, one complete stranger, quietly stood up before anyone else could react. That was the moment everything changed. But to understand why those words shattered an entire family, you have to understand the promise I made 11 years earlier. Because I never wanted revenge. I only wanted respect. Stories like this aren't born from a single cruel sentence. They're built over years of silence, small insults that nobody notices, sacrifices nobody remembers, and one moment when someone finally decides they've had enough. If you've ever felt invisible to the people you loved most, stay with me until the end. And while you're settling in, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I always enjoy seeing how these stories bring people together across the world. Now let me tell you about Evelyn Brooks. Evelyn wasn't the loudest woman in any room. She wasn't the kind who demanded attention. She believed attention should be earned, not chased. Every morning at exactly 5:30, before the city stirred awake, she brewed cinnamon coffee, watered the small herb garden outside the kitchen window, and wrote 3 things she was grateful for in a worn leather notebook. It was a habit her late grandmother had taught her. No matter how people treat you, Grandma Ruth used to say, never let bitterness be the first thing you feed your heart. For years, Evelyn lived by those words. Even after marrying Daniel Brooks. When they met 12 years earlier, Daniel wasn't wealthy. He drove an aging pickup truck that rattled whenever it climbed a hill. He worked 2 jobs. His shoes were worn thin. But his smile carried ambition. He often joked that he had expensive dreams trapped inside a cheap wallet. Evelyn loved him because he laughed easily. Because he remembered birthdays. Because he believed in building a future instead of chasing shortcuts. Together, they opened a tiny catering business from a rented commercial kitchen. The first month, they barely earned enough to cover ingredients. Many nights, they split one takeout meal between them while planning menus for clients. They prayed would call back. Daniel handled marketing. Evelyn cooked. Every recipe came from years spent beside Grandma Ruth. Smoked turkey glazed with peach butter, garlic herb rice, creamy baked macaroni with 4 cheeses, sweet potato soufflé topped with caramelized pecans. People didn't just eat her food. They remembered it. One satisfied customer became 3. 3 became 20. Soon weddings, birthdays, church banquets, and corporate events filled their calendar. Daniel loved telling people he had built the company. Evelyn never corrected him. Whenever reporters or local business magazines asked about their success, Daniel smiled for photographs while Evelyn stayed in the kitchen checking temperatures and seasoning sauces. She truly believed success belonged to both of them. Until slowly, it didn't. Money changes some people gradually. You don't notice the difference. Until one day you're standing beside someone who looks exactly the same, but feels completely different. Daniel's first luxury car became 2, then 3. Their modest home became a modern mansion with towering white columns, a glass staircase, and enough rooms that guests joked they needed a map. The catering company expanded into restaurants, then event venues. Daniel became something of a local celebrity. He loved interviews, loved expensive watches, loved introducing himself as a self-made businessman. The words, "we built this," quietly disappeared from his vocabulary. Instead, he began saying, "I built this." Evelyn noticed. She simply chose not to fight every battle. Their daughter Maya noticed too. At 10 years old, Maya had inherited her mother's quiet observations. One afternoon, while doing homework in the kitchen, she asked a question that made Evelyn stop chopping onions. "Mom." "Yes?" "Why does Dad thank everybody except you?" The knife froze. "What do you mean?" "When he gives speeches." Maya shrugged. "He thanks investors. He thanks managers. He thanks customers. He thanked the family dog once. But he never says thank you to you." Children have a remarkable talent for finding truths adults spend years avoiding. Evelyn forced a smile. "Your father appreciates me." Maya looked unconvinced. "You didn't answer my question." Evelyn changed the subject. But that night, those words echoed louder than any applause Daniel ever received. A month later, Daniel announced something enormous. "We're hosting the biggest anniversary celebration this city's ever seen." His eyes sparkled with excitement. 100 VIP guests, business partners, local politicians, investors, media. It'll be unforgettable. Evelyn smiled. It sounds wonderful. Daniel leaned back proudly. I've already promised everyone the food will be extraordinary. She laughed. When isn't it? He barely looked up from his tablet. I'll need you to handle everything. The menu, the staff, the timing, the presentation, the desserts, the logistics, basically everything. She nodded. When's the event? Daniel finally looked up. 3 weeks. 3 weeks, for an event that normally required at least 2 months of preparation. Still, she simply opened her notebook and started writing. The next 21 days became a blur. She met suppliers before sunrise, negotiated fresh produce deliveries, tested recipes, scheduled temporary staff, designed serving stations, checked dietary restrictions, coordinated rentals, repaired equipment, tasted sauces, adjusted desserts because the summer humidity changed baking times. Most nights she slept less than 4 hours. Daniel? He focused on invitations, photographers, interviews, decorations, and social media promotions. Whenever someone praised the upcoming event, he accepted every compliment, without mentioning Evelyn once. The night before the celebration, Maya wandered into the kitchen carrying a blanket. Her mother was still peeling vegetables at nearly midnight. You should sleep. I will. You said that yesterday. Evelyn smiled tiredly. I have one more tray. Maya climbed onto a stool. Can I help? You have school tomorrow. I'd rather stay. She quietly peeled carrots beside her mother. After several minutes, she whispered, Mom? When people forget everything you've done, does it hurt? Evelyn looked at her daughter carefully. Sometimes. Then why don't you tell them? Because gratitude demanded isn't really gratitude. Maya frowned. I still don't like it. Neither did Evelyn. Saturday arrived beneath brilliant sunshine. The Brooks estate looked like something from a luxury magazine. White tents covered the gardens. Crystal chandeliers hung beneath silk canopies. Live musicians rehearsed near the fountain. Luxury cars lined the driveway. Professional photographers moved from guest to guest, capturing glamorous arrivals. Inside the outdoor kitchen, however, chaos ruled. Ovens roared. Steam clouded the air. Servers rushed between stations. Chefs called out timing. Evelyn moved through it all with astonishing calm. Checking temperatures, correcting seasoning, comforting nervous staff, remembering every allergy, every seating preference, every special request. She knew the location of every serving spoon in the entire operation. People trusted her because she never panicked. Around 5 in the evening, the first guests arrived. The aroma of roasted herbs, grilled vegetables, smoked meats, fresh bread, and homemade desserts drifted through the estate. Guests couldn't stop talking about the food. This smells incredible. I've never seen presentation like this. Who hired the chef? Daniel smiled proudly. The best. Then smoothly changed the subject. By sunset, every table was full. Exactly 100 guests, business executives, community leaders, neighbors, friends, extended relatives. Everyone admired Daniel. Almost nobody noticed Evelyn. She wore a simple white blouse beneath, a red apron because she'd spent the entire day cooking. Her hair was tied neatly into a bun. She hadn't even had time to touch up her makeup. She didn't care. Seeing people enjoy her food had always been enough. Or at least, it used to be. Dinner service began flawlessly. The roasted turkey disappeared almost immediately. Guests returned for second servings of herb rice. The grilled vegetables vanished. Dessert plates emptied faster than servers could replace them. People applauded the meal. Several investors congratulated Daniel. One television host even asked, Who designed this incredible menu? Daniel lifted his wine glass. Our hospitality team. Hospitality team. Not Evelyn, not his wife. Not the woman standing 15 feet away refilling serving trays. Hospitality team. Something inside Evelyn cracked. Ever so slightly. As the final course ended, Daniel climbed onto the small stage near the fountain. Music faded. Everyone looked toward him. He adjusted his tailored navy suit and smiled confidently. My friends, what a beautiful evening. Applause erupted. He thanked sponsors, investors, partners, employees, guests, even the landscaping company. Evelyn listened quietly while replacing empty serving dishes. Not once did he mention her. Then came the announcement. I'd like my executive team to join me at the head table. Managers stood. Executives followed. Business partners rose. Everyone applauded. Evelyn assumed she'd finally remove her apron, wash her hands, and sit beside her husband after working nearly 18 straight hours. She walked toward the beautifully decorated head table. Daniel noticed. His smile disappeared. The microphone was still on. He didn't lower his voice. He didn't pull her aside. Instead, he looked directly at her, in front of everyone, and said, "Evelyn." She stopped. "We don't have enough seats." A few guests exchanged confused glances. Daniel forced a chuckle. "You've been helping the kitchen all day. You should eat with the staff." Silence. Evelyn stared at him. "I am your wife." Daniel's expression hardened. Then he said the words that froze the entire garden. "Servants don't sit with us." No music, no laughter, no clinking glasses, only silence. 100 people heard it. Some gasped. Others looked away. Maya stood halfway from her chair, tears already filling her eyes. Evelyn's fingers slowly loosened around the serving spoon in her hand. It slipped, clattered loudly onto the stone floor. The sound echoed through the courtyard like a judge's gavel. Daniel realized, far too late, that every camera in the garden had captured the moment. And from the very back of the crowd, an elderly gentleman in an understated gray suit quietly pushed back his chair and began walking toward Evelyn with calm, deliberate steps. No one recognized him immediately. But Daniel did. The color drained from his face, because the last person he ever expected to witness his cruelest moment had just arrived. No one moved. The evening breeze seemed to disappear. Even the musicians, unsure of what had just happened, slowly lowered their instruments. Daniel's words lingered over the garden like smoke after a fire. "Servants don't sit with us." Evelyn didn't cry. That surprised everyone. Instead, she calmly bent down, picked up the serving spoon, wiped it with a clean towel, and placed it back on the buffet. Her hands were steady. Only Maya knew what that meant. Whenever her mother was deeply hurt, she became quieter, not louder. Then the elderly man reached Evelyn. He looked at her with warm eyes before speaking. "Are you Mrs. Evelyn Brooks?" She nodded politely. "I am." The man smiled. "I've waited nearly 6 months to meet you." Daniel hurried across the lawn. "Mr. Whitmore, I didn't know you were coming." Several executives suddenly straightened their backs. Whispers spread around the tables. "Whitmore? Is that Charles Whitmore?" The Charles Whitmore? The billionaire philanthropist rarely attended public events. When he did, newspapers wrote about it for days. Daniel forced an uneasy smile. "It is such an honor to have you here." Charles barely glanced at him. Instead, he extended his hand toward Evelyn. "No, Daniel. The honor is finally meeting the woman everyone keeps telling me about." Daniel's smile faded. 6 months earlier, Charles Whitmore had secretly visited one of the Brooks catering restaurants while traveling through town. He hadn't announced who he was. He simply ordered lunch. A young waitress accidentally spilled soup across his expensive jacket. The poor girl burst into tears. Before the manager could fire her on the spot, Evelyn had stepped in. She apologized, comforted the frightened employee, paid for the ruined meal herself despite Charles insisting it wasn't necessary. Then she quietly told the waitress, "One mistake should never erase someone's dignity." Charles never forgot those words. He later investigated the company. Every employee he interviewed said the same thing. "If you're treated well here, it's because of Mrs. Brooks." Not Daniel. Evelyn. Back in the garden, Charles turned toward the guests. "I've spent my entire career investing in businesses. Do you know what I look for first?" Nobody answered. "Not profits. Not buildings. Character." He slowly faced Daniel. "And tonight, I witnessed yours." The silence became almost unbearable. Daniel laughed nervously. "I think this is all just a misunderstanding." Charles interrupted him. "No, I heard every word. You called the woman who built your success a servant." Daniel swallowed hard. It was a joke. No one laughed. Charles walked toward the buffet. He admired every dish. Who prepared this? Everyone already knew the answer. Evelyn. He picked up a plate, tasted the roasted turkey, closed his eyes. Incredible. Then the peach-glazed vegetables. Then the macaroni. Then the homemade bread. He smiled. "This isn't catering. This is craftsmanship." The guests applauded. Not Daniel. For the first time all evening, they applauded Evelyn. She looked uncomfortable. Not because she disliked praise, because she'd gone years without receiving it. Charles then did something nobody expected. He pulled out the chair beside him at the head table, turned toward Evelyn, and said, "Mrs. Brooks, if there is anyone here who deserves this seat, it's you." The entire garden erupted into applause. Maya ran across the lawn and hugged her mother tightly. "You belong there." Tears finally rolled down Evelyn's cheeks, not because she had been insulted, but because, after years of being invisible, someone had finally seen her. Daniel stood frozen. He wanted to speak, to explain, to regain control, but every excuse sounded hollow before he even opened his mouth. Several investors quietly exchanged business cards. One leaned toward another. "If that's how he treats his own wife, imagine how he treats partners." Another nodded. "Character always reaches the boardroom." Daniel heard them. Every word felt heavier than the last. The local television crew hadn't stopped recording. Within hours, a short clip appeared online, only 28 seconds long. It showed Daniel saying, "Servants don't sit with us." Then it showed Charles Whitmore inviting Evelyn to the head table. By sunrise, millions had watched it. Comments flooded every platform. "I came for the drama. I stayed for Evelyn. I've never wanted someone to succeed more." What kind of husband says that? The internet wasn't debating the food. It was debating respect. Monday morning brought consequences Daniel had never imagined. 3 major investors postponed meetings. A luxury hotel paused negotiations for a catering partnership. 2 board members requested an emergency ethics review. One longtime client sent a short email. "We prefer doing business with people whose private character matches their public image." The cancellations continued all week. Daniel couldn't believe everything was collapsing because of one sentence. But deep down, he knew it wasn't one sentence. It was years of arrogance finally becoming visible. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened to Evelyn. Former employees reached out. Current staff visited her. Letters arrived at the house. One envelope contained a handwritten note. "Thank you for treating us like family when no one else did." Another read, "You taught me that kindness isn't weakness." She placed every letter inside Grandma Ruth's old recipe box, not as trophies, as reminders that quiet goodness is rarely wasted. 3 days later, Charles invited Evelyn to lunch. He didn't speak about Daniel. He spoke about leadership, about integrity, about businesses built on trust instead of ego. Then he made an offer. "I oversee a foundation that teaches hospitality and culinary, entrepreneurship to young people. We've searched for someone to lead it. I think we've finally found her." Evelyn stared at him. "Me? You. I've met talented chefs. I've met brilliant executives, but very few people know how to build people. You do." She hesitated. "I've spent years behind someone else's shadow." Charles smiled. "Exactly. It's time people saw the light instead." That evening, Daniel found Evelyn sitting in the herb garden, the same place she drank coffee every morning. He looked exhausted. For the first time in years, he looked like the young man she'd once fallen in love with. Not because he had changed overnight, because success had finally stopped protecting him from consequences. "I'm sorry." She remained silent. "I don't expect forgiveness. Still nothing. I don't even recognize the man I became." She finally spoke. "I recognized him." Daniel looked up. "I just kept hoping he would remember who he used to be." Those words hurt more than public criticism ever could. Weeks passed. Evelyn accepted Charles's offer. She stepped away from the company she had quietly built. The announcement shocked the business community. Many employees followed her to the foundation, not because of higher salaries, because they wanted to work with someone who respected them. The catering company survived, but it never regained its former reputation. People had trusted the food. Now they questioned the leadership behind it. Months later, the foundation hosted its first graduation ceremony. Young chefs from struggling neighborhoods proudly served meals they had created themselves. One nervous student approached Evelyn afterward. "I never believed someone like me could become a chef." She smiled. "Neither did I." He frowned. "But you already were." "No. I became one the day I stopped believing someone else had to recognize my worth." The young man never forgot those words. Neither did Maya, who stood nearby listening. On the anniversary of Grandma Ruth's birthday, Maya opened the old gratitude notebook. Its final blank page waited patiently. She handed her mother a pen. "What are you grateful for today?" Evelyn thought for a long moment before writing. For the day disrespect finally introduced me to my own strength. Maya smiled. I think Grandma would have liked that. I think so too. Not every story ends with a marriage saved. Some end with something far more valuable. Self-respect. Because love without respect eventually becomes loneliness shared by two people. Daniel lost contracts, lost influence, lost the image he had spent years creating. But none of those losses compared to the moment he realized he had taken for granted. The one person who had quietly carried him toward success. Evelyn, however, discovered something no title or fortune could ever provide. She learned that your value doesn't decrease because someone refuses to see it. Sometimes the people who call you just a servant are standing on foundations you built with your own hands. And when those foundations disappear, so does the illusion of their greatness. If this story made you see respect, gratitude, or quiet strength a little differently, let me know in the comments. Because sometimes the most powerful seat at the table is the one you earn after deciding never again to beg for it.